Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, so everyone, I'm Janice Wiles. I'm with Go Native Perennials. And I told myself I wasn't going to give you bad news, but I'm going to have to give you bad news because we are in a really bad way. And I think you probably are all the converted and understand this, that when you look outside and you see lawn and you see invasive species and you see non-native plants in every garden, you know that that's wrong. You know that's not going to work for the long term. And actually the UN corroborated that. You know, we only have until the end of the decade to flatten the line, the dip on our insect and bird species and all wildlife essentially. Transformational change is needed, and what grabbed me here at the local level, that's us. We need to all work on this. So how do I do this? Where do I shoot it at?
I'll do it.
We're stuck on the service berry. Sorry, guys. On the bad news. Okay.
Nice service.
Oh, did you do that or did I do that? I clicked.
Yeah.
I did that?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So
One thing.
this is this is more bad news. This is what's happening with our massive insect decline in the last decade, 41%. So who cares, right? Well, birds care. You've probably seen Talame's work on how many thousands of caterpillars, young songbirds have to feed songbirds have to feed their young in order to survive. So those populations also have plummeted. And it's different segments depending on what they eat and where they are, right? And how we change the landscape. But you can see that the grassland birds have really declined. The eastern forest birds, not as much, because we still have a lot of forest, but we've definitely taken out a lot of our grasslands. So how does this happen? Well, if you don't have native plants, you don't have insects, you don't have birds. It's just that simple. So, and when you go into nurseries, there's a huge non-native plant trade, as you all know. So, and there's an expansion of monoculture grass, which offers nothing to wildlife. So, it stands to reason that as we expand that, 500 square miles every year, that we're going to lose our wildlife. They don't have stuff to eat. They're going to die. So, and this is, out of Talame's work. So we've built our business not to make money, although I have to make enough to pay people, but to really follow ecological principles. That's the only way I think that we should be doing. And I talk a lot about the restoration economy versus the growth economy. Can't we just work on the restoration economy? We really need to. So we focus on, we only use, well, we should say 95% of our seeds are local ecotype. We're testing out some other ecotypes to see how they do, but we try our hardest to get our local ecotype. And what does that mean? So there's a map put out by EPA on ecotypes, and it's based on biotic and abiotic characteristics. We are in 60 and 83. I mean, Skaneateles Lake, actually exactly where our farm is right on the border, so we get the advantage of much larger area to search from. Why is that important? Because those seeds and those plants and wildlife have co-evolved. So if they're hit with some big storm or some change, they are the most resistant. They've got the genetic ability to resist any huge change. Maybe. At least it's the best chance we have, right? So we are trying to source all our seeds from regions 60 and 83. They've co-evolved with the wildlife, so we want to give the wildlife a better chance of survival. Number two, guiding principle number two, no nativars or cultivars. And there's a good policy paper on HDNY's website on this. And we follow that. And why? Because cultivars have been changed, genetically changed to favor what people want, not what wildlife. So if we want to get plants out there for wildlife, we should do what they want, right? We should give them what they need, which is more nectar, pollen, and the quality. And they're beautiful plants. It's the way they are in nature. So number 3, design to rebuild fully functioning ecosystems that include people. So I put these gardens, you've seen these gardens. I mean, some of these are Janice and they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, they're not fully functioning ecosystems, but they're a start, right? And if we make them so that people like them, there'll be more of them. So we need to consider that. We'll get more into that later. And number 4, maximize surface water protection in every component of what we do. The lakes, the streams, the rivulets, the gullies, the ditches. They're all a mess, to be quite honest. So we need to be, when we're restoring or we're planting, we always need to be thinking about how is it going to protect water quality. You've probably seen this, deep roots. These are perennials. This right here is grass. Right? Look at that root structure.
Actually verbalize where those are.
Oh, sorry. The grass is all the way to the left. And you can see the grass roots, a couple inches. So when it rains really hard, the grass is almost, and we're talking about lawn, turf lawn, right? The grass is almost like cement. The water will take whatever it has in it, whether it's dog waste or oils or whatever, trash, and it'll just go right over that grass. But if you have native perennials that have deep roots like this and fibrous roots, they open up the soil, decompact it so that the water can go down. And that's what we need, is water going down into the earth, not across, going down. So, for example, this right here is your piece of drinking water, right? Is that a good use of is that a good border for that? Is that a good protection? That's grass. That's just dirt, right? Shallow rooted grass. It's not good protection. You don't want that. You want protection, something protecting that drinking water source, which is a non-filtered drinking water source. And the important one, that you want something protecting that, keeping that water down into the soil where it can filter and then gradually make its way to reach our zones back to the lake. It's another way that we're trying to figure this out. Cornell's done some good work on this. Native plants, asters, some phlox, oatgrass that look like a maybe short meadow that you can, when you want to play croquet, you just mow it. And you don't want to play croquet anymore, I don't know. But then when you're done, when your family leaves, you let it grow again. So we're going to be testing out some of these things on the farm and seeing how they work and using them for demonstration to get away from the monoculture and get into native grasses. So now we get into the how we're going to do this, right? So let's say you have a piece of property that you want to put into native plants, but you're not sure how. Well, first you need to figure out what you have. If it's all turf grass, that's pretty easy, right? We'll show you how to handle that. But maybe you have some wild area that you just want to look at and you don't know what it is. Well, first you have to identify what it is. So map what you see. Use a couple apps, they can help. You can call upon HCCNY people, Finger Lakes Native Plant Society people. Just call upon us. We'll help you. We need to figure out what you have, because maybe, in fact, you have some really good native species and you definitely want to leave those. You want to work around. If you have invasives, we've got some tools. We've got some people. We can remove those for you. You definitely want to get those out of there. Save the natives you have. I'll go into a few techniques that we've learned from Larry Weiner. You want to slow the flow. If you've got water flowing quickly, down into a river course or into a ditch, you want to figure out how to slow that down, how to get it to go, the water to go down and not across. And you buffer. We're going to be doing a presentation. Chrissy Boyce from Cornell is going to be doing a presentation in our Shorelines Matter series, called Naturalizing Your Shoreline. And she's going to be demonstrating, showing some plants that are really good to use for that. So, and then restore compacted soil. You know, much of our soil, especially the stuff that's been under turf grass, is compacted. And grasses and sedges are really good for that. So, and when you get started, don't start by killing soil life. Soil life is critical. There's a lot happening under the soil, right? And we don't even know how much is happening. But all of those critters, they live underground, right? They burrow, they take the carbon from that's absorbed from the plants and they turn it into sugars. They do all kinds of stuff, right? Really, really important not to drive a tiller through. So you'll see in our presentation, we don't till. I'll explain what we do to open up farmland and to use it, but we don't till. We don't till the place where we're going to be planting plants. So also another reason not to till and why not to mulch too heavily is because there are ground nesting animals, bees, that they form little holes, little pathways down, and they put the pollen down in there for their little baby bees, and they, it's a beautiful system. And if you cover it up with mulch, they can't survive. So
What's too heavily?
well, I would say no mulch. I would say use plants instead of mulch, green living mulch. That said, we've had to mulch in areas where there's been tremendous influx of English ivy, and we've used mulch. We intend to take it away this year and seed more meadow seed. So it's a process, I should say. It's really difficult to just do it all at once, I have to say, if you're making conversions.
What I've kind of done over the last couple of years is no mulch, but I've substituted top dressing with compost. A layer of compost, just top dress.
Yeah, it's interesting. Normally, this is what I've learned from Cornell, is that native plants generally like more nutrient deficient soils. And if they have nutrient rich soils, they'll grow bigger, and it just changes their whole physiology. And so it's not a great idea to compost. No. I think, but there's varying conversations happening around that. So don't take my word. Just put that in your head and start researching it more, I think, to make your own decision. There's a really good publication on pollinator gardens put out by Cornell that will address some of the mulching thing, I think. So how we started? Well, we actually started because we got this piece of property. We knew what we wanted to do. We started growing some food, but we also got a call from, it was either Janet Allen or Carol Biesmeyer. Somebody called my business partner and said, hey, Nannyberry Nursery is closing down. They're up in Fulton. And Rick and Robin, they're retiring, moving away, and they want to get rid of their stuff. And we got in a truck right up there. And neither of us really knew much about native plants. We knew the problem. We knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't know how. And so we went up there, this is 2019, and we bought a bunch of his stock. And he gave us a whole bunch. And he gave us knowledge, and he gave us contacts. And it was amazing. It was just a gift that I could never, it wouldn't have happened had it not been for Rick and Robin. So we got these plants, and I'm like, Mary, now what? I guess we're in business, but what does that mean? So I said, my instinct here is to plant them. We have to watch them. We have to understand them. We have to know what they look like. We have to know when they bloom. We have to know when insects are, what we just have to learn, right? So we did. We had zillions of plugs and we put them in. And so I wanted to tell you how we prepared the soil, because it was all, orchard grass. It had been in chickens and cows and who knows, right? So I have a walk behind BCS tractor. And it has 3 attachments. I bought 3 attachments. One's a tiller, a single blade. So what we did is we tilled the walkway, and that sort of folded the soil over and made a raised bed. So we never tilled where we planted, we tilled where we're gonna walk, which is gonna become compacted anyway. That's just the nature of it. You have to have a place to walk, right? If you're gonna do production, which is essentially what we're doing. So we did that and we planted, and that was 2019. And then a year later, we had a lot of plants. We had a lot of plants and we had a lot of seed and beautiful flowers. And all of a sudden we had gardens, and wow, this really works. So we figured out the irrigation, we figured out how to make this work. And there's more. And we just fell in love with these plants too. I mean, once you do this, you become, I don't know, I became enamored with our natural history. Jimmy, this is ours. We should be proud of this. It's like the history that we have. We look back 500 years to something that's been built, or 400 years, but this is our natural history. And we don't revere it the way we should, in my book. So this is what we did. We built hoop houses for germinating. We put plastic on them, and then for growing, we take off the plastic when it gets hot. We put on shade cloth. And here they are. These are all the seeds from 2019. We stratified them. You know what that means? You put the seeds through a process that they would normally go through in their natural cycle. Seeds drop off plants, let's say in the fall, they lay on the ground and they get cold, and then they get a little warm, and then they get cold, and then they get really cold. And they go through that process. And then when it's time, when they have enough light and the soil's warm enough, they have water, they sprout, right? They germinate. So we collected the seeds and we did that process in plastic bags with soil and put them in the refrigerator. And then in the spring, we put them on ProMix trays, and lo and behold, they germinated. So here they are. Here's some of them. And then I said, well, let's keep planting them. Let's just keep planting them, because then we'll produce more seed. Sure enough, these plants, that if you keep them in pots, they might do okay, depending on the species, might do okay. But if you put them in the ground, in the right place, they grow. They do really well. They become strong, right? Which is what we want, right? We want strong plants. We're going to take them and put them in someone else's yard or someone else's garden. We definitely want to have really good. So that became sort of my thought process is, let's grow them to maturity, dig them up. So they're already seeding, they're producing seed. If you're going to renaturalize, get them to somebody else's place. So they're seeding, right? So they seed in that place. And then they have more plants. And then you gradually do this, right? I didn't see any other way. If somebody takes a little plant in a pot and puts it in their garden and goes, okay, is that renaturalizing? So anyway, so then this is 2020, we're planting these out. 2022, I said, okay, we need to do this at scale. So I learned that the Northeast Organic Farming Association has an ecotype project, and they were getting organic farmers to grow plants, native plants for seed. And they're called founders plots or seed increase plots. And I went, that's what we need to do. So actually, these are 2022 plants, but I figured this out in 2021. So in 2021, we took a lot of our plugs, we planted them in another field. So we had, lots and lots of plugs that stayed out there during the winter. And then in the spring, they got big and beautiful. And this is some penstemon, and then there's some mountain mint, and who knows, I can't remember what else is here, but this is last year's seed increase plot. There's, another field, and then I'm opening up another field to do the same thing. It's not without problems. I mean, things happen during the winter that you don't expect. You put these tarps down with pins, landscape pins, and sand, bags of sand that are really heavy, and a lot of them. And oh, for the winter, the wind blows and it shakes them up and they do a little twist and then they blow away, and it takes a bunch of your plugs with it. So it's not the perfect system, but it's the only one we've been able to come up with, except for I have another idea now, but we're going to see how that goes. So here are some of the landscapes that from this year. It's bone set, kind of a funny picture, but anyway. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about making meadows. And this was something that in 2021, we approached, or in 2020, we approached SUNY ESF Restoration Science Center, and they have a lawn to meadows program. I said, well, heck, that sounds like something we need to get into. So we had them out and they assessed what we had and they said, okay, let's do a meadow together. So we did. So this, when we first got the land in 2019, we put this in tarps and cucumbers, Asian cucumbers, for a food bank, not a food bank, a food hub in Rochester. So we grew a bunch of cucumbers, but we didn't really think that we were going to be getting into large scale food production. It was just something we wanted to just try something here and get our feet wet. So we did. And so the tarps were down after we harvested all the cucumbers, and this is the spring. And we had put another tarp on top because these all had holes in them for the cucumbers, right? So we put another tarp on top. Obviously it had holes too. I don't know what we were doing, but we put a lot of sandbags down. And so during the course of the year, the sandbags moved and the tarps blew off. The seed bank, I mean, if you had looked at it, it would look just like dirt, right? Just or soil under there. And because everything had been killed under the tarp except for where the holes are. So the tarp blew off and a bunch of stuff germinated, right? So we put the tarp back on and then we killed that stuff. And the tarp blew off again. And so then a bunch of stuff germinated. So we're killing the seed bank that we don't want, right? So that's how we did it. And it was happenstance. And so Sam Quinn at ESF said, oh, well, that's good. You killed the seed bank. Let's do a meadow there. So that's where we put the meadow. And here we are. We took the tarp off, cleared out some of the plants that had grown through the holes, and then we put the meadow in. So I don't know if you know about the process of putting a meadow in. It's pretty simple. You rake it to make little furrows kind of very gently because you don't want to bring up any seeds that might still be in the seed bank. And you seed, and then you put down what's called tackifier straw, to kind of cover it and protect the seeds and keep the birds from eating the seeds. And then you use a roller, which is up in the left-hand corner, and it's very heavy. And you roll it across so you get seed to soil contact, right? So, and then you sit back and watch and see what happens. And you also cut the seed, your seed source. You also add either oats or rye. And at this time of year, you add oats, the warm season. So, and the reason for that is it takes up space, and it's an annual. So you cut it off before it goes to seed. So it takes up space so that weeds don't come in, because you haven't covered every last inch with meadow seed, right? You just covered some of it. So the oats help with that. So first what you see is oats coming up. And then you see on the left, 3 months later, that's what it looked like. So why is it all black-eyed Susans when we had 27 herbaceous species in there and 5 species of grass? Well, because the black-eyed Susans, they don't need to go through a stratification. So when you plant them in June, they aren't going to go through a stratification process until the next winter, right? And they don't need it. So they germinate, right? And there were some others that germinated too, like partridge pea. But mostly it was black-eyed Susans and then the oats. So 3 months later, that's what it looked like. But in July, the seed mix had gone through that germination or that stratification process through the winter. It had gone through the cold, warm, cold, warm, whatever that process is that the seeds normally do in nature, right? It had gone through it, and so we had a lot more germination of different species, the middle picture. Right? And then in August, we even had a little bit in the Monarda. So now this is a meadow, right? This is a meadow. Probably you wouldn't find something exactly like this in nature, but we're trying to get these species out there, right? To get these plants out there. So what happens? So woodies will start coming in, shrubs and trees will start growing. So our job now is to make sure that those aren't invasives that are coming in. And maybe even if we want to put some in, we dig, shrub in or something that's native if we want to. So you can play with this all you want. You also, as I told Sam, it also doesn't have to be square. It can be any shape you want, as you will see. So this is what it looks like in the winter. Very important habitat for insects and birds. Right? All those little stalks, they can provide places for eggs for the insects. So here's so we decided, because we couldn't find landscapers who were going to do this, who were going to work with us or do any native plant installations, we decided, well, I guess we're going to do it ourselves. So people wanted it. So I said, okay, here we go. I'm not a landscape designer, but I will do this for you. So, and then you're going to have to suffer the consequences. It's just really funny. You go out and cut up somebody's sod, but it's turning out really well, actually, because nature is these plants are beautiful, right? You can't go wrong. So I've got a sod cutter. I bought an old used sod cutter, and we started taking up sod, as you can see. And these are some of the mature plants on the right side, right against that little area that we cut out. We cut all that. Can you see this? I don't know if the Zoom people can see this. We cut all of this. This is a garden that the woman had, and we took out her non-native plants except for some sedum because she really liked it. That's fine. And then we made it bigger. And then we cut all this for a meadow, right? And then we took the sod that we cut and took a lot of it. We didn't take all of it. We flipped it over here. Because when I did the assessment, there was a lot of asters and beautiful asters in here, like New England aster and some others. And so I thought, well, let's just continue the native plant, grow right there. So we flipped the sod, and I took a bunch of Monarda plants that I had that I didn't really want to overwinter, and we planted those in there. And then I also seeded the meadow. So this was seeded in meadow, and this was seeded in meadow. And then this is sort of a more formal garden, which I think is really nice to have next to a meadow. It really, I don't know, it's more human scale, maybe. So we'll see. We'll see if the people end up liking it. They love what they have now, but we'll see how it looks in the spring when it gets warmer. Anyway, so this is just a picture of where we got some of the plants on our farm. Like that's some of the seeding. That's some of the. Can you say whether it's pointing? Oh yeah, up at the upper left-hand corner. Those are some of the plots where we planted plugs, and they became big plants like this, right in the Vermont cart, in the cart. And we dug them up, and they went out to jobs. So, and you can see I'm in the truck with a bunch of plants ready to go out to a job. So, yeah. So, and here are some of this is finishing another job where we rolled it out. And here's where we planted the Monarda, and we put the seed mix down here. This is also all seed mix. And here's Stephanie planting out those plants that we took over. So it's really important to remember that for biodiversity, the more plants you have, the more diversity of plants you have, the more diversity of insects and birds. Nope. So here, this is another job that we did. And the first thing we did was look around and see what was here. We found like 4 different species of asters that the woman was like, take it all out. And I'm like, no, let's not do that. Let's take a look. So we kept the asters. We cut back some of the Canadian goldenrod, but that's a really important species for wildlife. So, I was trying to encourage her to keep it, why take it away? So, but this was all English ivy. And so we cleared 2 truckloads, as you can see over on the left, 2 truckloads of English ivy, which was a tough job. And then we put in mature plants and put in some garden or some meadow right in here. We just seeded right in here. And we did put down mulch, like I said, to try to impede the English ivy. We'll see. We'll see how it ends up this year. So I wanted to get into a little bit about acceptance of this kind of gardening, because it isn't common that people have meadows in their yards or, different native plant gardens. I mean, Janet Allen has a gorgeous area, but how many of her neighbors have adopted it, right? So it's a bit challenging, I think, to get people to accept it. I think the more we all talk about how important it is, the better. I think we all can make a difference by showing how beautiful these plants are. And there are ways to do that. And one person who's sort of revolutionizing this is Benjamin Vogt in his new book, Prairie Up. And he says, if you're going to be in this business, you need to learn to design. And he gives all kinds of great tips. The idea is that so my garden looks amazing to everybody who goes by, and they want to know how they can get one. So anyway, he talks about intention, height, structure, bursts, drifts, and burst would be a burst of, a pod of plants, the same species that all burst into bloom at the same time. A drift would be, a long area of the same plant, and it would bloom, and then another would bloom, and you plan it according to that, right? And it really is quite remarkable, the stuff that he does. So sorry for these pictures, I took them out of his book. He gave me permission though, but so his headquarters is one of these houses, and he's done essentially what Janet Allen did. He just made it into a native prairie, I guess. It's a garden prairie, and it's really quite nice. And it's an HOA, and he had to, kind of bend the rules a little bit, but he got permission. And I wanted to say that that's something that's really important to work on, is getting those rules changed. It's happened in Somerset, Massachusetts, and in Montgomery County, Maryland, where HOAs now are allowing people to put in native plant meadows and gardens to expand, change their ways. So here are also, excuse me, they're blurry, but you can see they're beautiful landscapes in his yard, and he's alone, he's new in the area, so he hasn't quite converted everyone else, but I think he will. So this is, I don't know if you've heard about Piet Olldorf. He did the High Line in New York City, and an article is just out in Vogue on his gardens. They're remarkable. They're native plants. He uses a lot of cultivars, which you don't have to use, but you can use the structure and the layout of his plants. And he actually provides some plans for this. He uses a lot of plants, planted them close together. Native plants generally like that. They do well together when they're sandwiched in together. You don't have to plant them, foot apart with a lot of mulch around them. It's a different kind of garden style that I'm learning about. But I think this is really remarkable. And if you have a chance to look at his book, he's just got a book out that's just unbelievable. So next is some good news. And this is, well, the bad news is that this is a challenge. The National Academy of Sciences put out a report in January, and they said native plants and plant ecology should be at the forefront of restoration and land management if we are to successfully restore resilient ecosystems. So going back to this map, this is where we're gonna get our resilient plants. 60 and 83 to put in these areas, right? And but there is no commercial stock of those seeds. It doesn't exist, and we're not alone. So with hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, mudslides, droughts, floods, what do you do when the earth is scoured? Well, the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, Department of the Interior, USDA, they used to just say, oh, we'll just put down XYZ seed. It didn't matter, right? Now they're saying it does matter. You need to put down native seed. And then everyone goes, uh-oh, we don't have it. So now what do we do? So I just got back from this conference, which Beth told you about. I was able to get a scholarship because we're scrappy for myself and for one of my employees. And we went, and it was in Virginia, and essentially it was amazing. There were scientists there were practitioners, there were seed collectors, there were heads of government. It was really quite a nice collection of people who were all saying, we need to establish regional seed networks. So lo and behold, there's a Northeast Regional Seed Network now. And I am so excited by this because I for one, want to help this come to fruition. I'm going to ask HCCNY to participate as well. It's so important if we're going to actually build, seed stock for these kinds of climate-driven problems, right? Challenges. So the news release that came out with the NIS report said that supply of native seeds is insufficient to meet the needs of current and future ecological restoration projects. So it's incumbent upon us to change that. So at the National Seed Conference, there was put out there that there's several steps to moving this forward. I just put down 3 that I feel like I can participate or we can participate in, and hopefully HCCNY will participate in. One is to expand economic opportunities for farmers to grow locally adapted native seed. So that's something that our business wants to work on. Number 2 is develop regional seed networks, which the Northeast Seed Network, they're actually coming here in May. They're going to go to Cornell. They're going to visit the farm. And I have some ideas for who else they should visit. I'd like to steer them your way. We'll see. We'll see how. I don't know. I don't have their plans. I don't think can't control their agenda. But I'm real excited about this because they're really going to help. There are plant material centers that USDA has for NRCS, the NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service. That it's all been about ag, and they get seeds and they clean them and prepare them and get them out to farmers. Now, I think that there's a real, the heads of state are working together essentially to say these plant material centers need to serve native seed processing as well. Because what happens is when I collect seeds, when we collect seeds on our farm, we dry them, and then I spent all of November cleaning them and checking for their viability. And it's not something I'm terribly good at or trained to do. I mean, I did train Chrissy Boys at the Monday Wildflower Garden at Cornell. She has helped me so much, but still, it's something that requires, somebody who's really going to invest all their time in that. I'm trying to run a business and do a bunch of other things and sell this, right? And anyway, so I think it would be much smarter if we had a collective, a cooperative, and farmers gave their seed to one place to do all of that with people who are trained. So there's a plant material center in Corning, and I'm hoping that this will all fall into place and they will help do that process. And that would help us a lot. And we need to increase public education and awareness. We really need to do this on steroids to talk about the need to have more seeds available. So, or grow more plants for seed. So our next steps, we want to grow the ecological gardening movement and follow in the footsteps of HCCNY and help in any way we can, support that. And also one thing I'm working on is staffing up And I'm only staffing up with part-timers, but I want to get people who really love this, who are dedicated, so they can be trained. You know, if there's one thing I learned in Brazil, it was capacity building, capacity building, capacity building. We have to have trained people who know what they're doing, who are dedicated, who understand farming with these plants, you know, how to grow these in production. It's just, it's not easy work. And people need to understand that's a key piece. Seed increase fields. Here's one of our seed increase fields. I think I showed you already, but we're going to be doing the same thing. Hopefully a lot more. I mean, we've already started actually. I want to test out doing a demonstration with different kinds of grasses to see if that could work, you know, and use it to show people, you know, to test getting it out on their lawn, taking up lawns and putting in native species. And then we have a CSA, and our CSA helps. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a community supported agriculture where people buy into getting a box of vegetables or herbs throughout the summer. And so what it does for us is it helps support the labor on our farm and keep things rolling that works for both the food and the native plants. So they help with us be able to do educational programs and all kinds of things. So if you want to help support us, you can buy a CSA and you'll get delicious organic food, regeneratively grown. So anyway, but we want to start incorporating native foods into those boxes. So that's it. Please come visit. We're not a retail nursery. We're wholesale, but we do allow people to come by appointment, and we'd love to have you.
Another thing too, while I think about it, that she has cards over here about her businesses. So at the end, if you want to learn more about what she's doing and how to contact them, information is right up here.
Yeah, we have a website, so you can go on the website. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
It sounds like you've only been doing this a few years, but what do you foresee the issues of maintenance are? Because from my perspective, having worked out a meadow for at least 10 years, the goldenrods come in and are very aggressive. You know, and if I don't pay attention, I'm just gonna have nothing but goldenrod. And the second thing is that I do wait until now. We've had, you know, some more weather. Most of the time I don't cut anything down in the meadow, but this is the first year maybe in years that I did cut everything down. And I think a lot of people are usually cleaning up in the fall, which is probably the worst time that you want to
Right.
clean up.
Right. So we don't clean the meadow. In fact, I was told by ESF to mow it this year. So we're going into our third year. Maintenance with goldenrod is tough. One thing I can say about goldenrod is that you can cut it low before it goes to flower, and it will flower low. You can also cut off the seed heads, you know, and that's a lot of work, but you don't want to be pulling up things. I mean, you can clip it down at the base, and then hopefully you'll you know, retard some of the growth. We haven't had that problem yet. So I can ask, and you can also contact the ESF, the Restoration Science Center. I'm sure you get probably a better answer.
Yeah, we're just cutting it back, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Do you have any other?
No, I have no, I was going to tell you that one of the strategies that Larry Weiner, I don't know if you know him, he's New Directions in American Landscapes. He's quite a remarkable landscape designer, but also, you know, he does meadows. And a couple things he's used to retard, to help convert cool season grasses to warm season grasses, like cool season invasive grasses or non-native grasses to native warm season grasses, is elemental sulfur, because it lowers the pH and makes the soil less fertile. And we all know that our grass needs fertilizer, right, to be able to survive, and water, right? So if you lower the pH and make and that will, if you put elemental sulfur on it, it will bind up with nutrients and won't allow the plant to have as much nutrients, and it will not be as healthy. And native grasses don't need that. So that's a possibility for conversion. That's with grasses. That doesn't really have to do with goldenrod, and I don't know if you could apply that same technique, I just don't know.
Well, it's interesting because obviously here in central New York, we're on limestone, so our soil tends to be, as you know, sort of very neutral, as they say. The other side of the there's more cement.
Yeah.
So we're gonna alternate between live questions and Zoom questions. So Zoom question, from John Allen. How do you know if seeds that you collect locally are from plants that are actually from this area? That is, they could have been plants obtained from Home Depot and originally grown in Alabama.
That's a good question. You don't know. You don't know. I mean, you can try to be as, vigilant on that. I mean, I've got records that, they start in Fulton, but actually, when we questioned where those plants came from, those seeds came from Cornell, from their collections, right? But, you still don't know that every last plant didn't come from Prairie Moon in Minnesota. You just don't know. Observe them, see how they do. I mean, if they're doing well, it doesn't matter if they're doing well, but we'll never know how well they're doing with regard to insects unless we have studies, right? And there are projects doing that, but I say, do what you can. Just try as hard as you can to figure that out. I don't think I have another answer for that. It's a quandary. It's difficult. Yes.
How do we sign up for the organic produce program?
Oh, there's a card right over there. Thank you. Oh,
Well, yeah, but it's a question on the plant sales, and I'll do that then.
So, having heard other talks about trying to maintain seed banks, which has been an ongoing problem in the Northeast in particular, although there are companies slightly further south and federal agencies out on Long Island that are trying to do this.
right.
One of the things that comes up is that to really maintain a native seed bank, you only grow those field stocks for about 2 or maybe 3 years. And then you start all over and go out and collect more seeds because you're now selecting for things that will grow under your field conditions and not the wild conditions. If in fact you're trying to put these back out into the landscape and expect them to be maintaining the genetic diversity
Right.
that was originally there. Do you have any insight into
No,
that process?
that is something that was not addressed at the Native Seed Conference that I found, and something I'm definitely going to address, because that's something, if I get into this, right, big time, I need to know what my rotation is going to be and how to deal with that and lining that up. I mean, we've been taking a lot of our stock and getting it elsewhere, so we haven't really collected, we don't have the same stock really. So we have substituted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you get into this for seed, you have to do that for the genetic diversity. Like, yeah.
I think it was Uli Lorimer.
Yeah.
Who has done some of the work along those lines.
Yeah, I think he is participating because this whole Northeast Seed Network is housed where he is, right? He's the chief horticulturist there. So I think we're all going to get information on how to do this, and there's going to be a sort of a prescription on how to do it. And I'm looking forward to that. So as soon as I get any information, I will definitely share with HGCNY. Yeah.
I'm just curious if they're addressing succession. We talked about weeds, but I mean, this is the whole goal, right? Is to eventually have an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Not just prairie, not just the,
Yeah.
but normally here we would be swampy forest.
Yeah.
And mostly swampy forest. We may never get that back.
Right. And that's what we need is sponges.
But that's what I've been trying to do with my little third of an acre is I'm putting in a lot of trees. And I am using cardboard and mulch to knock back a little bit of my goldenrod, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just to open up
Good for you. Yeah.
artificially
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah.
And red oak, white oak, serviceberry, my prairie moon, elderberry is trying to take over everything. Once I get it in, has decided, oh, okay, well, this is ours now.
Right.
No, just have your little spot, because I would like as many, as you say, the diversity of seed stock.
Yes. Yes.
Because hopefully, maybe one of these days, my neighbors will decide. And I've given out a ton of elderberry, a ton of this, a ton of that, to try to help people to start
That's
putting in
awesome.
natives.
That's awesome. I'd like to get your name and number
Okay.
because, we may need seed,
But this is an artificial process that I'm trying to say, well, I'm not gonna start a fire in my yard.
Yeah,
For me, it's cardboard and mulch.
yeah.
And
Well, I think that's what I guess what I'm trying to say is there are optimal ways of doing things. And then there's that gray area. We just have to acknowledge that we're human beings and we're trying. But just try not to do that, right?
I was very excited. I had my first, I believe, my first overwinter monarch caterpillar and my first late hatching, huge, beautiful monarch. I mean, she must have been like 3 inches across,
Wow.
4 inches across.
Uh-huh.
But she left late, so I know she must have started in my yard or somewhere around us.
Uh-huh.
'Cause I saw her in like October
Huh.
and told her she was late and she should probably get a move on. But I think she was the caterpillar that I got pictures of. And I've had milkweed growing for a long time, and it's a long process
Mhm.
to get them to the point where they're able to reproduce specifically in one spot and not,
Mhm.
this might be my first year that I know I had reproduction happening in my yard. So how are you gonna balance that on the farm with succession and, are you going to pursue succession or?
I don't know. I mean, I think probably we have so many different areas. Like I'm even working on some shade meadow area, because we need shade plants and we have a lot
And
of sun.
wet plants
and wet plants.
versus.
Yeah, I don't have, I have a creek, but it's pretty far away. It's hard to get to physically all the time, to check things, right? So my inclination, we have one field that we're leaving to succession. It's really interesting. And my hope this year is that I'll get in there and take out some of the invasives, maybe with a flame weeder, I don't know, and put in some native plants just to see how that goes. Because what's happened is we've got goldenrod, but we have New England aster, we have Pilosa aster, we have lots of other things that the seeds have come from some of our plots and they've landed and they're growing, right? So we may be creating a meadow. And if stuff's coming in, I know there's some dogwoods in there that are coming in, and if stuff's coming in, that's just all gonna stay, right? And so we're observing. So, but in the meadows we use for demonstration, I think we probably won't let the woodies come in at this point. I'm still waiting for ESF. We're still, it's just all new, right? So we're just watching things. It's only going into our 3rd year, and there's still some seeds that haven't germinated. So, let's see.
So we do have one other thing on here.
Okay.
Nancy Stewart, who said it's a great presentation, and please let everybody know again where the native plant sale will be. So the native plant sale will be Saturday and Sunday, May 13th and 14th at the Allen's house, John Allen in Westvale. If you go to hgcny.org, there will be information there, including directions to the Allen's house. No questions live? Okay.
Yeah,
Who's the source of the map of the, I guess, regions?
it's EPA ecoregion, and this is level 3. So there's the first level is pretty pretty large, and then it gets more. Next.
Well, could you talk again about the way you dug up the sod and
Sure. It's called a BCS. It's an Italian walk behind tractor, and it has a single filler blade. And we just, so let's say you want your walkway to be 18 inches. You might go maybe 8 inches from the right, and you till it right there, and it goes right over, it flips the sod over, or the grass, orchard grass, whatever it was, the pasture. Flips it over and it raises that bed. And then you do the same thing on the other side, so you get more, right? And then, we just worked it. And now for our food, we use a broad fork to open up the soil. It's just like forks that go down into the soil and then open it up to aerate it. And then we harrow the top which kind of flattens it out so you have a planting surface. Does that make sense? It works. Yeah,
Is the network collaborating with the Holding Fund?
well, I offered to make that connection, and so I'm going to do that actually today to try to, I've got somebody from the Onondaga Nation now working on the farm. She starts this week. I'm really excited about that. And she worked with, is her name Angela? Forgot, she's giving a talk this week. Angela, I forgot her last name. She sort of leads their seed to people efforts. Yeah, so yes, definitely the indigenous nations are involved and they're working hard to connect. Anybody else? Thank you so much for coming.